Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. Night was falling over New York City, the lights of the skyscrapers twinkling like artificial stars. In his top-floor office, Jackson Reed, CEO of a major technology company, scanned his emails with a mixture of boredom and demand. Most of his employees were numbers on a spreadsheet, names without faces. But that evening, a notification caught his eye, a food order placed by one of his employees, Mia Johnson. He frowned. Mia was young, always punctual and efficient, but nothing in her file suggested she lived outside of the company in such a human reality. Curiosity, and perhaps a darker instinct for control, prompted him to type the address into his GPS. Jackson's black SUV glided silently through the streets of Brooklyn. Each block brought the CEO closer to the truth he wasn't sure he wanted to discover. Finally, it stopped a short distance from the modest apartment building where Mia lived. He peered through the tinted window. She received his order, smiling despite the obvious fatigue on her face. As soon as the door closed behind her, she rushed to the kitchen to serve her two younger brothers and her ailing mother, carefully preparing plates, a daily gesture she performed with dignity and love. Jackson felt an unexpected mixture of surprise and unease. These moments of simple humanity, these invisible struggles of her employees, were far from her world of meetings and contracts. He realized then that he had witnessed something no HR report could ever reveal, the life behind the work. A life of silent sacrifices, daily courage, and modest but persistent dreams. And in that moment, Jackson Reed, the man accustomed to controlling everything he touched, felt helpless, yet strangely fascinated. Who was Mia Johnson, the employee he thought he knew? The next morning, Jackson Reed couldn't get the image of Mia Johnson in his small Brooklyn kitchen out of his mind. His rational side wanted him to ignore this intrusion into his privacy, but an irresistible curiosity drove him to find out more. After his morning meeting, he got back in his black SUV and discreetly followed Mia from the company gate. He noticed that she wasn't going straight home. She was first making a detour to the supermarket to buy some groceries, then a stop at the pharmacy to pick up some medication. Every action, every decision, testified to a responsibility overwhelming for her young age. When she finally arrived home, Jackson watched her from afar. The small, modest apartment was dimly lit. Mia entered, helping her two younger brothers up the stairs, a bag of groceries in each hand. Inside, she immediately got busy, preparing a simple but nutritious meal, distributing medication to her ailing mother, helping the children with their homework. All this with a smile, despite the obvious fatigue that marked her face. Jackson felt a lump form in his throat. He had seen figures, reports, and balance sheets, but never such humanity, such dignity in simplicity. He realized that Mia was leading a double life, the one he knew at the office and the one she lived every night, with courage and selflessness. He took a few steps back, hidden in the shadow of his SUV, and whispered to himself, "It's her, and I have to figure it out." But he didn't yet know that this decision would shake up his perception of his employees, and even of himself. Because following Mia wasn't just a professional curiosity, it was the beginning of a confrontation with the reality he had always ignored. Jackson Reed spent the next day mentally reviewing every detail of the previous evening. Every gesture Mia made, every smile she showed despite her fatigue, echoed in his mind. In his luxurious office, surrounded by spreadsheets and financial reports, he felt strangely out of place. The world he lived in, one of power and ambition, suddenly seemed empty compared to Mia's courageous reality. He asked himself 1,000 questions. Should he intervene? Should he remain a silent observer? His CEO instincts told him to do nothing. His employees' private lives were none of his business. But his humanity refused to remain passive in the face of what he had just discovered. That evening, Jackson got back in his car. This time, he drove even closer to Mia's apartment building. He wanted to understand how she managed to work double shifts and support her family. Every step he took in the shadows of the street seemed to bring him closer to a truth he'd never imagined. Behind the perfect office worker, there was a young woman full of courage, dignity, and resilience. He watched her open the door to her apartment, greet her brothers and mother, and prepare dinner as if nothing had happened. Jackson felt a strange tension. He wanted to intervene, to help, but he knew his intrusion might be perceived as an affront to his autonomy. As he was about to leave, he muttered to himself, "I can't just sit back and do nothing, not this time." It was the beginning of a dilemma that no CEO training could solve: how to reconcile power and compassion, authority and humanity, without breaking each other's trust. The next day, Jackson Reed made a decision. He could no longer remain in the shadows. He wanted to understand Mia, but more importantly, he wanted to connect with her. He devised a credible pretext: the food order placed at home had a problem, according to the customer service report. A little white lie that would allow him to approach Mia without arousing her suspicions. Knocking on her door, he felt his heart beat faster than it had in years. Mia opened it, visibly tired after her long day, but with the same politeness and calm that so fascinated him. "Good evening, I'm, from the delivery company's customer service. It seems there was an error with your order. I wanted to make sure everything was okay." Mia looked at him, suspicious but polite, and replied, "Ah, thanks for checking. Yes, everything is correct on my end. But thanks anyway." Jackson felt a mixture of admiration and surprise. Despite the visible difficulties of her daily life, Mia didn't seek confrontation or excuses to complain. She was dignified, humble, and incredibly strong. He looked around his modest apartment, the small living space where every object seemed carefully placed, every detail revealing the rigor and discipline of a person who carried more responsibilities than she should at her age. "Can I come in for a few minutes? I just want to make sure you're happy with your order," Jackson tried, with a mixture of caution and insistence. Mia hesitated, a mixture of curiosity and caution in her eyes. Finally, she stepped back to let him in. Once inside, Jackson was struck by the warm atmosphere despite the difficulties, the muffled laughter of his brothers, the tired but smiling mother, and the sense that, despite everything, this family knew how to create a world of dignity and cohesion. As he left the apartment, Jackson knew he had crossed an invisible line. He was no longer a CEO watching from afar, he was now a participant in this life he was beginning to understand, fascinated by Mia and the quiet strength that emanated from her. A few days after their first meeting, Jackson Reed could no longer concentrate on his files. Every meeting, every call, every report made him think of Mia and the life she led in silence. He knew he had to act, but he wanted to do it tactfully, without damaging her dignity or pride. He decided to visit her again, this time under a completely professional pretext. He wanted to talk to her about an opportunity within the company. Mia, surprised but cautious, welcomed him into her modest apartment. "Mia, I know you work hard, much harder than most of your colleagues. You handle your responsibilities at the office and at home with impressive discipline and courage." Jackson paused for a moment, searching her gaze. "I'd like to offer you something, a position with more responsibility and a salary that might allow you to no longer work double shifts." Mia remained silent for a few seconds, shocked by the proposal. She had always prided herself on her independence and ability to fend for herself. She replied calmly, "Thank you, Mr. Reed, but I cannot accept. I do not want my work or my efforts to be reduced to a gesture of charity. I want to earn my living in my own way, even if it is difficult." Jackson was struck by her dignity and determination. He realized it wasn't just about helping her financially, but about understanding and respecting her choices. His offer had been sincere, but he knew he had to find another way to support her without compromising her independence. "Very well, Mia. I respect your decision. But know that I will continue to observe and learn from you. You've already taught me a lot without even realizing it." As he left his apartment that evening, Jackson realized that Mia Johnson was more than just an employee. She was a beacon of courage, dignity, and resilience. And for the first time in his life, he began to question his own definition of success. Jackson Reed couldn't get the image of Mia out of his mind. Her dignity, her quiet strength, her way of shouldering the responsibilities of her family, all of it haunted him. To better understand, he decided to do some discreet research on her, not out of morbid curiosity, but to understand what forged such determination. What he discovered shocked him. Mia hadn't had an easy life. Her father had left when she was 6, leaving her mother alone with 3 children to support. Her mother, despite her love and courage, had been ill several times, forcing Mia to juggle school, part-time jobs, and caring for her family. Debts had piled up, and every victory Mia achieved seemed to come at the cost of superhuman effort. Jackson realized then that double shifts weren't a choice, but a necessity. Every night, Mia faced a silent battle to survive and support those she loved. This discovery gave rise to an even deeper respect and an irrepressible desire to help her, but without diminishing her or taking away her independence. He remembered the impromptu dinner he'd watched a few days earlier, his brother's stifled laughter, his ailing mother's grateful gaze. Everything made sense now. Mia wasn't just a model employee, she was the pillar of her family. And Jackson knew he had to act delicately, because every miscalculated move could shatter the fragile trust she had with the outside world. That evening, in his luxurious office, Jackson made a silent promise to himself: he would find a way to help her, to support her dream, but always with respect for her dignity. This was no longer curiosity or mere fascination, it was a personal mission, born of admiration and respect for a young woman who had survived where many would have given up. As the weeks passed, Jackson Reed continued to run into Mia, sometimes by chance, sometimes under the pretext of work-related meetings. Each encounter offered him a deeper insight into her personality. He discovered a young woman who was both strong and vulnerable, capable of juggling her responsibilities without ever complaining. One evening, when he invited her to an informal gathering at a low-key cafe, Mia opened up a little more. Between sips of coffee, she spoke of her dreams: to open a small restaurant in her neighborhood, a place where she could feed her community with homemade food, while creating a welcoming space for families like hers. "It's been my dream forever, but with the debts and the double shifts, I don't see how I'll ever get there," she confided, her voice trembling slightly, betraying her fatigue and accumulated frustrations. Jackson listened attentively, touched by her sincerity. For the first time, he no longer saw Mia as an employee, but as a whole person, with her ambitions, her fears, and her resilience. "I understand," he said softly. "You've already accomplished so much despite the obstacles. If I can help you in any way, I will. But I want you to remain in control of your life and your decisions." Mia looked at him, surprised. She wasn't used to someone respecting her autonomy so much, even when offering help. She gave a genuine smile. "Thank you, Mr. Reed, that's rare." That evening marked a turning point. A fragile but real trust had grown between them. Jackson understood that to truly help her, he had to respect her choices and boundaries. Mia, for her part, was beginning to accept his presence not as an intrusion, but as a possible support. At that moment, both knew that something greater was beginning to emerge, a bond based on respect, understanding, and deep mutual admiration. Jackson Reed could no longer ignore the depth of admiration and empathy he felt for Mia. His thoughts were filled with her courage, her resilience, and the dream she had nurtured for years, to open a small restaurant for her community. But he knew that simply helping out financially wasn't enough, he needed to act with subtlety and respect. One evening, after an exhausting day at the office, Jackson quietly went to Mia's house. He entered her modest apartment with the same politeness and restraint as in their previous encounters. He took out a plain envelope containing a check and a detailed investment plan for his future restaurant. "Mia," he began, his voice filled with rare sincerity. "I believe in your dream. I want to invest in making it happen, but I don't want it to change who you are or make you feel indebted. This is a bet on you, on your work, your passion, and your determination." Mia took the envelope, her eyes wide. The magnitude of the gesture surprised her, but what struck her most was the lack of strings attached or pressure. She shook her head slightly, moved. I don't know what to say. I never imagined someone would believe in me so much." Jackson smiled sincerely. "I believe your success depends not only on money, but on your courage and hard work. You deserve this chance. The following weeks were a mixture of preparation and planning. Jackson remained in the shadows, offering his advice and professional contacts without ever imposing his authority. Mia, for her part, worked passionately, aware that every decision, every choice, was building her future. This gamble wasn't just financial for Jackson. It was a test of confidence, a way to see if Mia could achieve her dream without losing her integrity or strength. And every small success, every milestone reached, reinforced his conviction: Mia wasn't just an employee or a courageous young woman, she was a living inspiration. The CEO realized that sometimes true success wasn't measured in numbers on a balance sheet, but in lives you could help transform. The big day finally arrived, the opening of Mia's small restaurant in Brooklyn. The freshly installed signs, the tantalizing smell of food cooking, and the vibrant energy of the first orders filled the air. Mia was both nervous and excited. Every detail, every plate served, represented years of sacrifice and silent dreams. Jackson Reed was present, but still discreet, sitting at a table in the corner, proudly observing the fruits of his labors. To Mia, he was simply a discreet advisor, a benevolent supporter, but she was completely unaware of his true identity. As the day progressed, the crowds grew, the reviews were positive, and the atmosphere was euphoric. Mia took a break behind the counter, and Jackson finally approached, deciding it was time to lift the veil. "Mia, there's something you need to know," he said softly. Mia looked at him, puzzled. "Yes?" Jackson took off his coat and stood up, revealing the neat style and imposing bearing of a businessman. "I am the CEO of the company you work for. I'm the one who invested in your restaurant. All this time, you only knew me as an advisor, but now you know the truth." Mia stepped back slightly, shocked. Her breath caught, her eyes widened. You're Jackson Reed? The CEO?" He nodded with a genuine smile. "Yes. I wanted you to know that your hard work, courage, and integrity have deeply impressed me. This wasn't just an investment, it was a bet on you, on your determination." Mia felt a surge of emotion wash over her, surprise, gratitude, and a deep respect. She understood then that every moment of struggle, every sacrifice, every smile despite the fatigue had not only shaped her own life, but had inspired and moved someone else. I don't know what to say," she whispered, tears welling up in her eyes. "You don't need to say anything, Mia. Just keep believing in yourself, like you always have." At that precise moment, Mia realized her life had changed forever. Not only had her dream come true, but she had also earned the respect and admiration of a man who embodied power and influence, and who had chosen to serve his potential. The bond between them was no longer simply that of employee and CEO. It was one of mutual respect, deep trust, and a recognition of the quiet power that a single person could bring to this world. After the revelation, the dynamic between Jackson Reed and Mia Johnson changed profoundly. It was no longer just a professional relationship or discreet support, a mutual respect and admiration had been established, solid and sincere. As the weeks passed, Jackson began to understand the influence Mia could have, not only on his personal life, but also on how he ran the company. Every decision he made from then on, every employee assistance program he launched, was inspired by Mia's courage and resilience. He now saw his employees not as numbers on a balance sheet, but as people with stories, struggles, and hidden talents. For her part, Mia began to accept Jackson not only as a discreet mentor, but also as a friend and ally. She shared her successes, doubts, and challenges with him, and he listened, offering advice and support without ever imposing his will. Their relationship became a perfect balance of autonomy and collaboration, respect and admiration. One evening, as they were taking stock of the restaurant's first few months, Mia smiled. "I never imagined this dream could come true, let alone in this way." Jackson replied with a sincere smile. "You did it, Mia. It was your hard work, courage, and integrity that made it all possible. I just gave you a little helping hand." But deep down, they both knew that their meeting had transformed something deeper: Jackson's outlook on life and work, and Mia's confidence in herself and her abilities. For Jackson, this connection went far beyond mentorship or investment. It was a lesson in humanity, compassion, and mutual respect. For Mia, it was proof that courage and integrity could open unexpected doors, even in the most difficult circumstances. Their relationship, built on trust and admiration, became a silent model for all who crossed their path, an example of what respect, support, and collaboration could accomplish. A few months after opening the restaurant, Mia Johnson looked around with a mixture of pride and wonder. Tables were full, customers were laughing and sharing carefully prepared meals, and the entire neighborhood was beginning to talk about this cozy little place that reflected the passion and determination of its owner. Jackson Reed sat at a table in the corner, watching the scene with satisfaction. He had chosen to stay back, preferring to watch Mia shine through her own efforts. But with every smile from Mia, with every compliment she received, he felt that their gamble, their mutual trust, had paid off. Mia approached him, her eyes shining. "I never imagined this dream would come true. Thank you for everything you've done, Jackson. But most of all, thank you for letting me believe in myself." Jackson nodded, moved by her sincerity. "You did all the work, Mia. I was just a support. This restaurant, this success, is your strength, your courage, your vision. You changed not only my life, but also the way I see the world." The CEO also decided to apply the lessons he had learned. He launched assistance programs for his most dedicated employees, inspired by Mia's story, and began to place greater value on invisible efforts, those that escape balance sheets and reports. For Mia, the restaurant wasn't just a professional success, it was the culmination of her courage, sacrifices, and dreams. For Jackson, she embodied a lesson in humanity and respect that would transform his outlook on life and leadership. Together, they had created more than a restaurant or a simple employee-CEO relationship. They had built a living example of perseverance, dignity, and collaboration, a model for all who needed to believe that courage and hard work could truly change the course of a life. As the sun set over Brooklyn, illuminating the restaurant with its golden glow, Mia and Jackson smiled at each other. In that look, there was gratitude, admiration, and the certainty that this new life, the fruit of courage, respect, and trust, had only just begun.